Learn the Mamer in Memorim Lukotim. This is in Chelik Beis, the 44th Mamer. The Mamer is Basi Legani Achoisi Kalo, which the Rebbe said, Motzoi Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Boy, Yud Shvat, Tovshin Lamed Zayin. Now, the that Shabbos, the Rebbe also said the Mamer, is they bring down on the note over here that first of all, it was published on the 15th day of Shabbos, the 15th day of Shvat, Tovshin Lamed Zayin, that a few days after the Maimer was said. And the Maimer was basically said by the Rebbe twice in the Fabrengen, in the Svadius of Shabbos day, which was Yud Shvat, and on Motzei Shabbos Kodesh. Shabbos was on Yud Shvat, so the Rebbe said it twice, once during Shabbos, and then Motzei Shabbos Kodesh, and there were some changes and there were some additions. So they didn't, the way they published the Maimer, they wanted to have both Maimorim, but they didn't want to make two separate Maimorim because it was basically a repeat, but it just had additions. So the way they published the Maimer, the basis of the Maimer is the way the Maimer was said more uh, publicly or with more people hearing it was, of course, in Motzei Shabbos. They had all the means of communications to broadcast it and to after Shabbos. So that was the Maimer, the way they are, the structure of the Maimer, the way they publishing it. As the Rebbe said on the Motzei Shabbos Kodesh in the Fabrengen. But the additions that he said on Yom Shabbos Kodesh come in the notes. So there's notes and there's the addition to filling it. And then they have the usual footnotes to the references, which is in all Maimorim. And those references come for both, for the Maimer and for the additions. But uh, in my text over here, for technical reasons, we have the text. We'll learn the text, and following each piece of text where the note comes for the additional explanation, uh, we put it right on there. It's not at the bottom of the page, but it's inside, right in the page itself, and we'll try to weave in as we go on. Just the my both my modem together. Okay, we're learning this mimer. This week is also the first yahrzeit. The Rebbe doesn't like the term first yahrzeit because the Rebbe says, who says there will be a second yahrzeit? But nevertheless, on the 5th of Shvat, on Friday this week, is the yahrzeit of our dear son, Rav Levi Yitzchok, who was a dedicated shliach of the Rebbe for many, many years, and he was able to successfully disseminate the teachings and the love of the Rebbe and Chassidus to countless people. Very matzliach, ish matzliach, ashliach matzliach, very successful in his avodah. And we're learning the Maimer should be Lila Nishmasei, and we look forward to the Kiyum HaYud V'Kitzu V'Ran Mishnechne Offer. Those who rest in the dust will get up and sing, and V'Hu V'Teicham together with all the tzaddikim and Malkeinu V'Reshenu, and we'll do the Maimer inside. B'Siyayte D'Shmaya Motzoi Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Boy Yud Shvat H'Tovshin Lamed Zayin. So, Basi Legani Achoisi Kalo. These were the famous words in Shir HaShirim, in which the Friedrich Rebbe gave the gave this mimer in honor at that time of the yard site of the Rebbetzin and the Rivka, and etc. But then it ended up being the Mamer Hilula of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And the Rebbe every year gave the Mamer on Basi Legani. This time we said 2 times. So in Shir Hashirim it says, the Rebbe explained every year one parak of the Mamer. That year was Tavshin Lamed Zayin. So from the years Yud Aleph, for 20 years, the Rebbe went through each year saying one parak. So until Chaf Aleph, he did the first 10 chapters, and then till Lamed Aleph, he did the second 10 chapters. So by Lamed Beis, by Lamed Aleph, he started over again from the beginning. And Lamed Zayin, this was chapter 7 that the Rebbe says over here. It says in the first note that this Maimer is basically based on the 7th chapter from the Hemshech Basi Legani, Sefer Mamorim Tovshin Yud. This is the Maimer. So he says over there, Basi Legani Achesi Kalo, that I've come to my garden. Hashem is saying to the Yidden, calling them with affectionately, Achesi, my sister, Kalo, my bride. And Hashem is telling them, and I've come to my garden. And the fact that Hashem says, I come to my garden, which means that the garden was already the Eibishter. There's a indication that this is a return. It is my garden. And Hashem is saying that I've come to my garden. A garden is not just a place, but it's a place that it is sort of a for people to enjoy. Maybe I'll say kedushas meiri chomi admur bala yortzeit. So my father-in-law, the Rebbe, the Bala Yortzeit, brings down Vayilula and the Lula Yortzeit and the Lula b'mamore hayiduli Yud Shvat Toshin Yud. In his known Maimer of Yud Shvat Toshin Yud, he brings down the Isa b'Medrash Rabbah that we find in Medrash Rabbah. So note Aleph says right away, the Medrash Rabbah is very powerful lessons because v'yadua de b'Medrash ve'agoda, it is known that in the Medrash, as well as in the Agoda and the stories of in the Talmud, Roiv Soidis HaTorah Genuzim Bohem. The majority of the secrets of the Torah are hidden there. That tells us the depth and the importance that the secrets of Torah, secrets are the hidden parts of Torah, are hidden within the Medrash. V'chein Midos Tovos, also good character traits, lessons for behavior, that's also in the Medrash. Kidi Isa B'Igeres HaKodesh, that's found in the holy letters of the Alter Rebbe in Igeres HaKodesh, and he writes over there this value of the Medrash B'Negei LaGodesh B'Sefer Ein Yaakov. He talks about the Alter Rebbe encourages people to learn over there in the end of the Tanya to learn Ein Yaakov. So he explains over there as it pertains to Ein Yaakov. This is in chapter 23, Chav Gimel. He explains how important it is to the Agoda of Ein Yaakov. But the Rebbe says, Val derech zeu b'shar medrashim, same thing is by the other medrashim. So anyway, so the Rebbe brings down that a Medrash Rabbah, which is very, very important and telling in the secrets of Torah and Midas Tovos, that Legan ein ksiv kan. So the Medrash Rabbah brings down the Medrash Rabbah and Shir Hashirim on the Pasuk of Basi Legani brings down Legan ein ksiv kan elo legani. It doesn't say I've come to a garden, but I've come to my garden. My garden is a place of liginuni. It's my pleasuring place. The Eibishter is saying, I came back to a place where I was And in the beginning, L'makom shehoya ikri batchila hainu ikr dirosi. I came back to the place which was the main place I was in the beginning. When it all started, Hashem's Iker Dirose. Where did Hashem find himself? Mostly the plane, which was the main, we can call it the main housing, the main dwelling place of Hashem. That was the place that the Eibishter is coming back. Meaning to say that the presence of Hashem was mostly revealed. The main presence of Hashem, the main of Hashem was revealed in this world. The Be'ez B'riyas Ha'olam, when the creation of the world, at the time the world was created, Iker Shechina B'tachtonim Hoyo, the main divine presence was here in this place, in the low place, in this world, in Olam Hazeh. Vayidei ha'inyonim bilti ritzuyim shehoyu la'acharei zeh. And then through the undesirable matters that took place following after the creation of the world with time. The divine removed was left from the ground to the sky, to the Rakia, to the extent that it left not only to the sky, but to the seventh sky, as we know that there are seven different levels, the Shiva Rikim, and they pushed away, or the Shechina left from the earth, and it went to the Rakia, and then it went away further. Then there were seven tzaddikim that stood up. And they lowered the Shechina below. Heichel Avram Avinu, that started from Avram Avinu, Shahorit as Shechina Merikia Zayin Levov. He brought the Shechina down from the seventh sky to the sixth. Started with Avram Avinu, started to bring it down. It went all the way to the seventh. He brought it from the seventh to the sixth. Ad ki Moshe Shu Hashviya till Moshe, who is the seventh, Chol Hashvin Chavivin. And the seventh are dear, meaning they're special because it takes someone special or at a special level to bring it down all the ways to the world over here. So Moshe Rabbeinu was the Shvi Chavivin, he brought it down below to the ground. And this is generally the service tzaddikim. Moshe Rabbeinu was the first one to bring it down. That to bring the saying Basi Legani, coming back to my garden, they were saying that was done through Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the seventh that he could actually bring it down Legani into here, into this world. But this is not only Moshe Rabbeinu, but this is the general service of Avodas HaTzadikim. This is what tzaddikim do. In this context, it's not just tzaddikim, unique individuals, but v'amich kulam tzaddikim, which means all Yidden are tzaddikim, which means all of us keep on doing this avodah lahamshich hashchina lamata, to bring the shchina below. K'moshe Kosuv, this is actually the pasuk says, tzaddikim yirshu oretz v'yishkenu la'ad aleho, that the tzaddikim, pasuk says, will inherit the land. And we're teaching here they inherit the land is because Yishkinu la'ad aleho, because they bring and make la'ad aleho. The avodas hatzadikim. What is this service tzadikim? V'yishkinu la'ad lahashkin la'ad hashchina. Yishkinu, they make rest la'ad, La'ad is referencing Hashem, the one who Bechinas Shoichen Ad Morim V'Kodesh. Hashem is called Ad because why? Because of the saying that he is Ad, he's forever. Shoichen Ad Morim V'Kodesh, the Holy One and the Exalted rest ever. So he's Ad. So the Yishkenu, they make rest, La'ad, the level of La'ad, Allah, Lamata Ba'oretz. So, because the Yishkenu La'ad Allah, Tzadikim Sh'oretz, and that's why they merit this, that's why Tzadikim Yish'oretz, because Yishkenu La'ad Allah. And that's the connection that all Yidden, Tzadikim Yishoros, all Yidden, Tzadikim Yishoros, all Tzadikim, V'amechulim Tzadikim, have the avodah of Moshe Rabbeinu to bring the Shechina down, Lamata Ba'oretz. How did Moshe Rabbeinu bring down the Shechina Lamata? So there was two major things that Moshe Rabbeinu did. First, he built the Mishkan, and then also he gave us the Torah. So it says like this: "Amshochas hashchina lemato shalidei Moshe hoisa b'maisa hamishkan." The way the Shechina that was brought down below through Moshe hoisa b'maisa Mishkan. When Moshe Rabbeinu built the Mishkan, he made the presence of Hashem in this world. That was the Mishkan. That bring down the Shoichen Ad Allah into this world. And as the Rebbe says in a note base over here, that Taka, it was the Maisa Mishkan, was the manifestation. But Haschola, Saham Shocha, Hoysa Beis Matan Torah. The beginning of drawing down the level of the Shechina started through Moshe Rabbeinu when the Eibishter gave the Torah, and it came through Moshe Rabbeinu, but the Eibishter started by Yerit Milomailo, the Eibishter brought down this Hamshocha. But Moshe Rabbeinu's activity will be Iker Begilui. But when mainly was it? And when was it revealed, the open seeing, the Shechina in this world? Mamer Basi Legani was with the making of the Mishkan. That's why we call this that it was through the Mishkan that Moshe Rabbeinu brought down the Shechina in this world. The Haschola, was Matan Torah, but the Maisa Mishkan, the act of the Mishkan, building the Mishkan, was the revealed and the main manifestation of the Shekhinah over here in the world. In Yonehu, what is the Mishkan? Umashikosu, as the pasuk says, make for me a sanctuary, so I'll dwell amongst you. So this is the Shekhinah in this world. Shaboy, in this Mishkan, V'al Yodai, and through this Mishkan, Hoyam Shachas HaShechina. That's how the Shechina came down into this world. The idea that there is a pasuk that was given so many thousands years ago, make for me a Mikdash, and then we're saying that this is still the presence today and old times, that there needs to be a dwelling place through the Shechina, is understood because besides the fact that Torah is eternal, so everything in the Torah of Asuli Migdash, even though we don't have the physical Mishkan, still applies. But especially when we talk about a command to Moshe Rabbeinu, everything that Moshe Rabbeinu lasts, that's why the Gemara says that even the Mishkan that he built was hidden. It wasn't destroyed because it was hidden, because Maisi de Moshe Nitzchim, they're eternal. So the Rebbe adds in the note over here, in note Gimel, Obinyan HaMishkan Hayro Nitzchis, and in the Mishkan there is a eternal lesson to make a Migdash. When we talk about the Mishkan, there is an eternal lesson. The Hine Kol Maise Yidei Moshe Hem Nitzchim. All of Moshe Rabbeinu's, whatever Moshe Rabbeinu did are eternal, last forever. And that's why also the Mishkan that Moshe Rabbeinu built is eternal. The other Beis Hamikdash were burnt, but the Mishkan of Moshe remains. The Mizeh move on was it. The Mizeh move on. So this tells us, since we're talking about something that Moshe Rabbeinu built, also the Migdash was said to Moshe Rabbeinu, and it's Nitzchis. So this would be in addition to the fact that all of the Torah Shekolelas Gam Sipur Maisi Yidei Moshe, which includes also the story of what Moshe Rabbeinu did, also the Migdash, is also Nitzchis, just as being part of Nitzchis. It's being part of Torah. Every part of Torah is Nitzchis. So when the Torah tells us also the Migdash Shechanti B'Seicham, by Moshe, this is eternal. But in addition to that, Hine Inyan HaMishkan Atzmai, specifically this aspect, the Mishkan itself, it has a eternal lesson in every time and every space for each and every one of the Jewish people. Because when we say by remember, so we have a special instruction to remember the teachings of my Moshe, my servant, the Eibishter says, and we say, Moshe gave us the Torah, which is an inheritance for the community of Yaakov. So, all these extra support means that this is something, even though also the Migdash Shechanti B'Seicham is a long time ago, but it's something that we need to do all the time. It's the Torah is Nitzchis, Maisi the Moshe that he built is Nitzchis forever, and we have to listen to Moshe Rabbeinu specifically and Torah Tzivalon Moshe. So therefore, it's a special connection to all of us to continue the avodah that we're talking about that Moshe Rabbeinu did, also the Migdash to bring the Shechina v'Shachanti b'Seichel. V'hinei haschol asa Mishkan hoya b'Akarosha. The beginning, how did you make this Mishkan? It started with the Karoshim, with the beams. The Mishkan started off with the boards or the planks of the Mishkan. They made the boards, the planks of the Mishkan, they made them from shittim wood. As the verse states, you shall make these planks to the Mishkan. They should be made of shittim wood, standing shittim wood. So what's the idea of using atzei shittim to begin that Mishkan, as we're saying, to make this Shekhinah in this world? The idea this is as explained over there in the Mamer, based on the Gemara and the Medrash, the shittim hu meloshen shtus. The word shittim, for this wood, the shittim wood, comes from the root, from the language of shtus. Shtus means folly, unreasonable. V'hu ashtus de lumazeh. This is the foolishness, the folly of the other side. There's the other side, the side that opposes holiness, has a foolishness, which means it represents a foolishness to the draw to that, to do things in a foolish way. Mamer Azal, as our sages of blessed memory say, that a person would not violate a sin unless a spirit of folly, of foolishness enters him. foolishness is the other side that brings the person to do an avera. It's a foolishness. That's the shittim. Shittim is foolishness, and v'ha'avodahi, and what is the service? La'apech alidei is kafya v'izhabcha, through subduing and turning around, to not to give in to that spirit of foolishness that is trying to dissuade you or take you away from kedusha, to resist it by subduing and not listening, and then turning around eventually as ashtus de l'umazeh, that foolishness of the other side, lishtus de kedusha, to a fullness of holiness. This Mamer, this is like we see that there is a foolishness also used in holiness, because there's a statement in the Gemara in Ksubas Yitzayin Amud Aleph about the greatness of the tzaddik, that he was on a level all by himself. Why? So the Gemara says, Ahanile Shetuse L'Saba, this elder, the level of shtus, of not reason, acting in a foolish way. The Gemara says over there that he used to be mesameach, the chos and the kala, he would be throwing, juggling and doing things, making shtick in a way that sounded foolish. That helped him, says the Gemara, to be on this higher level than all the others, great people there. He was in a higher level. Why? Because he acted in the foolishness to do the Eberster, to be mesameach, the chos and the kala. So you see that in kedusha there is a level of acting in the extreme, in the positive way in kedusha, and that's the idea of the shittim, which is foolishness, and to use them to build the Beis Hamikdash. V'zehu masha akroshim hoyu matzi shittim. And this is that the kroshim were from this shittim wood. So al yidei avodas ha'odom, through the service of the person, oisi mashtus de l'umazeh. So then what we accomplish, we make from the foolishness of the other side, shittim, and now we make it kroshim la mishkan. Now we have planks. Now we're building the mishkan with those same shittim wood. That idea is to take the foolishness of Le'umazeh and to turn it into Kedusha. This is also the name that we call them. So that's the shittim. But we say that they're also called, make the kroshim make the planks from cedar wood. But the word keresh, planks, also has the same idea of turning around from the other side to Kedusha. The keresh hu oishi sheker. Keresh has the same letters as the word sheker, false wood. So false, of course, is a negative, is the other side. The kedusha is emes, is truth, and the other side is sheker. And the word of keresh has the same letter as sheker. Elo shebetziruf achar. The combination of the word keresh, the plank, has another connection. Now it's called keresh v'hainu. So what is the idea taking those kroshim, those planks? V'hainu shenyonim hu shemisheker ha'olam. The idea of taking the keresh is to take from the falsehood of the world. Oisim keren lamishkan. We make a keresh, we make a plank for the Mishkan to build the Mishkan. Base. Ice base. Mamshich, the Friedrich Rebbe and the Mamer continues that the word Keresh is the general Sheker Keresh, so the same letters to swap them around. But the Mamer will explain now that not only the general word, which is much higher, but also each of these letters of the word of Keresh, Kuf, Reish, Shin, but also those letters are also connected to this idea that Keresh, just like Sheker, the letters Kuf and Reish and Shin also are swapped around, as the Rebbe Mamshich, in note Dalet, so the Rebbe. What is the Alter Rebbe coming to explain? The Frierdiker Rebbe, I meant. The Frierdiker Rebbe is coming to explain is the Keresh Shayochim Hein L'Toich Nateva Kulo. How the detailed letters of Keresh, which is the Shin, the Kuf, Reish, and Shin, have connection to the world. The word is Sheker. Each letter, Shin, Kuf, Reish, is also Sheker individually. They're also along that side. So the idea is that you take these letters, Shin, Kuf, Reish, which are Sheker, and you make them into a Keresh. Individually, how each individual letters of these words, not just the whole word itself. The Keresh is Sheker that you turn to Keresh, but also each letter of Keresh is turned from the other side to the side of Kedusha. Why is that so important? So he says each individual letter is part and forms the makeup of what that word is. So it's made up of these letters because those letters are the individual pieces that make up eventually to a whole word. It's known, the teaching of Baal Shem Tov, the Hashem is shenikroim bahem b'loshen hakodesh, that the names which things are called in Loshen HaKodesh, hu chayusum v'kiyumim shel hanivroim. That's the vitality and that's the existence of the creation. So you have a name of something. That name represents the energy of Hashem in that created being, whatever is called with the name. So we have a general energy, which is the name, but then we also have the details from what the name is made up, those letters. Just as there is the general energy of the word, which is the name. So likewise, each letter and letter within the word, is drawing down an energy and a specific power. That's each letter. And how do we know sometimes about the origin of the letter is the way the letter is actually shaped, to understand what its meaning is, what its energy is. Utmonoso biksav, the way the image, the way they look when you write it, that points to the shape of how the things come down. Looking at the individual letter, you can see how the light comes down. As explained in Shara Yichud V'Amuna, that the shapes of the letter represent how the energy comes down. So v'gam chayus zu haprotis shayechesi la'chayus shebateva kula. And also this individual energy, which is represented by this one letter, has a connection to the general energy, vitality, shebateva kula, which is in the whole word, which makes up all these which is made up from all these oisias. Now, the word itself is a much higher level than three individual letters. While it's made up, even though the energy, which is the whole word energy, is a light which is higher than all. It includes and it's equal, corresponding to all the various powers and individual energies of the letters. So we can't really say that the general name, the general chayis, is at the same level as the individual oisius chayis of the thing, and the general word is a much more inclusive and much more ways, much greater than the individual powers and energies. That means that it's uncomparably greater, higher than the energy which comes in the letters, is the word is much greater. So, therefore, what does it mean by us in our case? Before we talked about Kedesh, which is sheker, to make from Kedesh into, from sheker into a Kedesh. So, the same thing is the Tevas Kedesh. You can say, it would seem, that there's no connection between the word Kedesh, which is a plank, to the individual letters of the Kuf, the Reish, and the Shin. There's no real connection. It would seem it's like a totally different chayis, a total different meaning. It's a new word which doesn't seem to relate to the individual. So why are we trying to find the Kuf, the Reish, and the Shin, how they all represent the turnaround from L'Umazet to Kedusha, which that's the idea of this word. But how are we saying that the letters, each letter also has that idea? So it would seem that the content, the idea of each letter should not have a connection to the word. The word has no connection to those individual letters from what it's made up. And here we're going to say how the word Kedesh, the Kufrei Shin, not just the word Kedesh, Sheker to Kedesh, but Kufrei Shin. But the Rebbe said there is a connection. If we're changing and we're saying that Kedesh is Sheker to Kedesh, each of the letters also has, while Kedesh is in a much higher, different level, the whole world, than the individual, but there's a connection. It's explained in many places that also this higher light, which is higher than everything, shaykh that has a connection to the very specific letters, to the letters of Reish, to Kuf Reishin in our case. The Zehu Gam Kein Diu Koloshen, the Oir Ha'oil Al Kulona. This is actually the precise language. When we talk about the word and we say the word is an Oir Ha'oil Al Kulona, it's a light that goes up on all of them. So, meaning that it's greater than all of them. It's much greater than each individual letter, the word itself. But what you're saying in the wording is it's an oir that goes up on all the letters, al kulona, which means it's made up. Even though it's a oir which is uncomparable to the light which is in the details of each letter. But the way it comes up is through them, meaning the letters impact how to come to that chayis of the general world. The details of the letters elevate them. Move on. From this we understand also as it pertains when we talk about name Kedesh. Also, the details of the letters of the word Kedesh have a connection to the idea of Kedesh in general. The general Kedesh says that from Sheker, from falsehood, you make Kedesh. So the Rebbe will now explain not only the general word Kedesh is Sheker, making it into Kedesh, but also the individual letters of Kuf, Reish, and Shin, as the Rebbe will continue to explain. So Mamer Shom, so he continues the Mamer. In the introduction of the Zoyar, when it discusses the matters of the letters coming up before Hashem, the Ale Kame Kuchabrichu, Lemivri Buhu Almo, they came up before Hashem to create the world. Isa, so we find over there the Ois Kuf Reish, that the letters of Kuf Reish are Asvun, the Ischazoyi Al Sitra Bisha Inu. Those are letters that are seen on the bad side. Kuf and Reish are letters that are seen Al Sitra Bisha Inu. They are on the bad side. Sitra, the side, Bisha, bad, that's how they're seen. Obeginli is Kaimo, so how could they stand? Natli ois shin begavayu. So they could not stand just on falsehood, just on bad. So they took along the letter shin amongst them chulu. The ois shin, because the letter shin, kuf and reish are sheker, are bad. The letter shin, ask shoiti, that's a letter of truth. The Zohar says before, the Kuf and the Reish are bad, and the letter of Shin is a true. So they needed to take the Shin in order for the Kuf Reish to stand. Why did they require the one letter of Emes, the Shin? Sheker has no legs, can't stand. So the Friedrich Rebbe explains in the Mamer Vavoidehi Lasois Mesheker Zeh, to make from this falsehood the Kuf, the Ois Kuf Reish, from the Ois Kuf Reish, to make them Kroshim La Mishkan, to make planks for the Mishkan from these letters. Behu Al Yidei Halu Umazeh the Ois Yiselu, and that is through the other side of these letters. Yes, these letters are letters of Sitra Bishn, but they also have the other side of these letters, which are in the side of Kedusha. Also Ha'alikim. Hashem made one the other. So you, in the opposite of the Kuf and the Reish, we have a Dalet, which is the opposite, which is the same as a reish, but it's has the same meaning, the same translation, but that's the kedusha in place to swap around, to make from this sheker, to make it into kedusha. And similar to the ois reish, we have, which is a letter of Sitra Bisha, the bad side. So, which is a letter of Sheker in the other side. So there is a letter of Dalet that is Kedusha. The Afal P, the Dalet V'Reish Heim Shavim B'Yerusham, the translation of the word Dalas and the Reish, they both represent a level of poor, of Dalus and Reish. They mean the same thing. The Daled who Meloshen Dalus Vanius, Dalet comes from the level of poor and poorness. The same thing is true for the word reish. Reish means rush. Rush means he's poor, doesn't have. So while they seem to be similar, reish and dalet, but we'll see there is not having, there's being poor, and there is being humble. Humble is also called poor because it's an expression of the person's attitude. Poor is really poor, has nothing. That's one, that's Sitra Bisha, that's Lumazeh. But the level of poor that we're talking about in Kedusha, meaning a level that you feel yourself, it's a level of humility. Uh, אף על פי דלת וריש הברוש לדלת, וכן לא שאני דלת בכל מקום, הרי מובדלים ומחולקים בענייניהם. But still they're separate and they're distinguished. Being the same word, the same poor, it means the same idea, but it's totally different ideas over here, totally different concept, even though they're both called Dalus and Rosh poor. It's not just a small difference. It is a fundamental main difference. A dalet and a reish can sometimes, if you say Hashem Echad, it's with a dalet, that's Kedusha. If you replace it with a reish, Hashem Acher, other, then you can destroy the world. That's saying just the opposite of the unity of Hashem. Or the same thing is if Hashem says you should not bow to another God, El Acher with a reish, if you substitute that with a dalet instead of the reish, it's also destruction of the world. It's saying you don't. So you see the dalet and the reish are not just a little different. We'll explain that difference can cause a whole lot of things. We can move on. It's a chiluk. We can move on. Ma'di isa b'medrash, and this is understood from what we find in the medrash. Ba'azhirus shetzorich liyis, how careful we should be. Shaloi la'achlif dalet bereish v'reish v'dalet, not to change the dalet for the reish and the reish and the dalet. And the reish and the dalet makes a big difference in the fundamental belief in the existence of Hashem. It makes a difference. Do is echad, which is with a dalet, lo inyan de kel acher, to the idea of a kel acher, another God. That's a reish acher, and echad is havaya echad. Ubishnei haksuvim hadalet v'reishem b'is rabosi. In both psukim, the dalet and the reish have they're larger font in the Torah. So you see, there's a strong connection, but it is something while they are both, but it's just opposite. If a person should switch and put the reish in the place of the dalet, Hashem Echad, he would put Hashem Acher, God v'dalet b'mokum reish, or he'll put the lekel Acher, he'll put in a dal lekel echad, not to plow to kel echad mokum reish. Harizemachri as the Medrash says, you will be destroying the worlds. Moving from this, we can understand shachiluk shebeneim hu min hakotza lakotza. Now the difference between the dalet and the reish is from one extreme to the other extreme. So that's knowing what they mean the same, but that's kedusha dalet, and reish is lu'umazeh, and this is something that we need to be very careful for, because the exchange is not just a simple problem, but it changes the whole meaning between echad and acher. There's also a difference between the image of what it looks like, a dalet and a reish. And the difference between the dalet and the reish, when you draw them, B'sif Hashvi, as the Friedrich Rebbe explained in the seventh chapter, the seventh sif in the Mamer, which the Rebbe was basically basing himself on Tavshin Lamed Zayin, on that seventh sif. It says over there in the Sif HaShvi and B'chol HaShvi in Chavivim Kenal, and it said before, they mentioned earlier that the seventh, Moshe Rabbeinu was the seventh. Over here, the Rebbe says it's in the seventh chapter. The seventh chapter is also there, Kenal said before. Specialty for that year when the Rebbe was teaching the Maimer, it's in the seventh chapter. So over there he explains, Shebois Daled, Yesh Yud Ze'era, that on the letter Daled there is a small Yud, which is Bechinas Nekuda Ma'acherov. It has a point, a dot in the back of the letter. Masha'enkin Ba'is Reish, as opposed to the Ois Reish. The Ois Reish in the back is rounded out, but over here you have a dot. This is the Yud, a Yud Ze'era. By the Yud Zeh, once you have this Yud in the back, in the B'mokim Reish, so instead of reading it as a Reish, Shoinyan Ha'aniyus V'adalus Delumazeh, which is the idea of the poor that is on the other side, Nasa Ois Dalet Kedusha. That becomes the letter Dalet in Kedusha. That Yud makes it Kedusha. At Kan Mitoichus Siv Zayin Shom, this is the contents that the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, spoke in that Maimer in Siv Zayin about this Yud. So, if this is Dalus and this is they're both poor, so what's the difference between them? The Rebbe is going to explain now the difference between being poor, not having, or being humble. And so, even though that also the word Dallas comes from the language of being poor, so how is it changed? How is it Kedusha? It's just like the Reish. How is it? So we put in a Yud over there. What is it? How does it change in the meaning of things? This is in the shape, you put in a little Yud, but it's still, with the little Yud, it still represents the same meaning as the word Reish. But the Rebbe says, this is not at all the level of Aniyus of Lumazeh. When we talk about being dal, poor, when we talk about it in holiness, that points to the level of subjugation in Kedusha, the level of self-effacement. As the Pasuk says, my soul should be like dust to everybody. A level of bittul. The Pasuk says to be like dust, to be humble. Or the other pasuk in Tehillim says, "Oni ve'evyin ani." I am poor. I have nothing. I'm an oni and an evyin. I have nothing. That's an expression of kedusha. Shezeu inyan hadalus mitzad bittul b'kedusha. That is the level of when one is poor because of the subjugation, which is in holiness. This is a level of humility. As explained earlier in the previous sif, in the Maimer, that would be in Sivov, Haifanim, Vamadregas, the Bittel, the various different ways and the various different level of this self-effacement or subjugation, Adla HaBittel, till the extent, the greatest level of bittul, the as Edes Garmo, that she makes herself small, which is the Eibishter said to the moon to make itself small because it complained it cannot be together with the sun. The Eibishter says it makes herself small, as Edes Garmo. That's one level. And then there's a further level, even a greater level, The moon has nothing of its own. The moon doesn't shine. All what the moon does, it reflects the shine of the sun. That the sun bounces off the moon, we looks like the moonshine, but the moon itself doesn't have anything. The bittul ze the leslo megarmo klum. This level of bittul, like we're saying by the moon, that it has nothing of its own. Ubittul betachlis ubishleimus. That's a total and a complete bittul. Yoiser gam me'abittul da'azeres garmo. That's even more than the bittul in which it makes itself small. It's total. Why? The ba'azeres garmo, when it makes itself small, hare adayin yesh no metzias. It's still an entity. It's small, but it's an entity. Elosha metzias bechinas zeir. The entity is a small entity. When we say it has nothing of its own, she has no existence at all. From the zeir, not even a small metzius. That's total subjugation. The level of less lo megamo klum is the ultimate. There is nothing there. It's not even a small metzius, no metzius. So this is when we say the Dalit Anius of Kedusha, the level of Bittul. As opposed to when we talk about being poor and Dal. On the other side, Shenyon over there, who Kameshakosov, that idea when this poor is Kameshakosov, Vilarosh Ein Koil, the poor person has nothing. Meaning it actually has nothing. It's poor, not because it's humble, not because it's subjugated, but because it has nothing. So the Mamer continues to explain Inyan Hayud Shemachori Hadalit, the idea of the Yud, which is behind the Dalis. Shal Yedeho. So this was a side note that the Rebbe made between the Dalit and the Reish, and the interpretation and the chiluk between that. The Rebbe goes back to bring the minor, he's Zion. So there he says that what is the idea Shalchura Dalit? Shal Yedeho, through that Yud, it mechulok, it's different, distinguished ma'areish the lumas and reish lumas. She'ein bo Yud, that doesn't have the Yud. So he said the im show is the eira mikol ha'ishis, even though that the Yud is the smallest of all the letters, hinei hu reish l'chol ha'ishis. It's also the beginning, the start. Any letter you shape, you start with a Yud. The chol ha'is harei tchilasei ois Yud. Every letter you start with a little dot, which is a letter Yud. This is what we find in the Gemara Menachos. Shebiyud Nivra Ha'olam Haba. That with the Yud Olam Haba, which is the creation of the world to come, comes from the Yud, because the Yud, notwithstanding that it's a small letter, it creates the all Olam Haba. It's a small letter, but it's the beginning of all the Isis. And then from that Yud, you get into the Sfiras HaYisoid, as explained later on. The letter Yud, as we'll see, represents the level of Chochmah. Also, the level of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud is the Chochmah. So it's the smallest, but it's the beginning of all the Oishiyas. And then later on, it comes to the Sfiras HaYisoid, which is Mamshech to Malchus. On this it says, on the Sfiras HaYisoid, Ki koil b'shamayim u'va'oretz. It unites the Shamayim. The 9 Sfiras from Chochmah till Yisoid, that's the Shamayim. Oretz, that's the Makabel, that's the earth, that's the level of Malchus. The Targum, so what does it say? Ki chol b'shamayim. When the Pasuk goes through over there, L'cho Hashem Hagdula v'Hagvur v'Atferes v'Hanetzach v'Ha'oid, and then it's Kichol b'Shamayim u'Ba'aretz is the level of Yisoid. Yisoid is Achid b'Shmayu v'Ara, which unites the upper spheres, the Shamayim, the Yud spheres with Oretz, with the Malchus. She spheres HaYisoid that represent Kikoil B'Shamayim v'Oretz is Yisoid, because the spheres HaYisoid is what is Mamshich to Malchus. Shebechinas HaMalchus Mekabeles V'Menacholu. It receives from the spheres HaYisoid, and that's why it's called Kichol B'Shamayim v'Oretz, because it's the connecting piece. Because Spheres HaYisoid is what gives to Malchus. Malchus is received from there. So you see that letter Yud, which is also connected to the level Yisoid, starts with the letter Yud as well. So that the level of Yud is connected, the Yisoid connected to the level of Chochmah, and the Rebbe will explain this letter, Ad Kan, by Mamer Sham. Up to here, this is from the Mamer over there, and the Rebbe will go on now to explain what is the connection to what he says, B'Yud Nibra Ha'olam Haba. Yeah, it's a big mila of the Yud, but we're trying to say the Yud with the Achid B'Shmai V'Oretz. So the Rebbe will continue to explain the connection between all these inyanim.